Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report presented by Angelo DePaola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty, the first podcast to bring you the local inshore, offshore, and onshore fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. I am your host, Butch Theory, here again this week, and before we jump into the reports, we've got a really cool opportunity for you. We have partnered with AFTCO, and they are offering all of our listeners 10% off AFTCO products. All you have to do to get your 10% off is text the word fishing to 314-665-1767. Again, just text the word fishing to 314-665-1767. Subscribe to our email list, and we'll send you the promo code via email. All right, folks, we have a great Alabama saltwater fishing report lined up. But first, let's see who's making the show possible this week. This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report is brought to you by Sportsman's Marine. Sportsman's Marine has an extensive tackle selection of anything that local anglers need for saltwater and freshwater fishing, as well as boating accessories. They have the largest selection of the slick lure in Mobile and Baldwin County. They have AFTCO, Pelagic, and Saltwater Fanatics apparel along with other local brands. Go check out their Edgewater, Wellcraft, and Vecsey lines of boats. They offer engine services with 5-star Yamaha and Mercury mechanics. And also brought to you by United Bank. United Bank knows what an important role agriculture plays in our local economy. At United Bank, they are here to support local farmers with financial products and services designed specifically for agribusiness, including real loans for farmland, equipment loans, working lines of credit, and more. Truth is, they deeply value the contributions agriculture makes to our communities, and they help our local farmers build successful businesses. They want to see you succeed. Learn more at unitedbank.com or stop by any United Bank branch. United Bank, all loans subject to credit approval, equal housing opportunity lender, member FDIC. All right, guys, I am your host, Butch Theory. Welcome back to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report. I'm joined this week with Angelo DePaola, the Coastal Connection over there in Orange Beach. Welcome back to the show, Angelo. How we doing this week, buddy?
Man, doing great. Still recovering from Memorial Day weekend. I mean, the older you get, the more it hurts.
I bet, man. I don't want to spoil the offshore report because you're going to be a big part of the offshore report this week. But congratulations, you guys caught a really nice dolphin, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing y'all's strategy and what made you successful this weekend.
Man, had a great trip, a great group of guys, just old school dudes on a boat, trolling and catching fish.
That's the way I like it, man. Dragging some lines, ain't nothing like it.
Oh yeah.
You guys have a pretty good turnout. Looks like a lot of people there at the weigh-in. There was some nice blue marlin caught. Was there a good turnout, you think?
Man, I'll tell you. So I've sat on the board for the Mobile Big Game Club now for, 7 or 8 years, maybe a little longer. And we've been going through this transition too, as like marlin fishing and the tournament world has evolved from really kind of stuff run by volunteers like the Mobile Big Game Fishing Club has these big giant tournaments like the Blue Marlin Grand Championship at the Wharf or Emerald Coast Blue Marlin Championship or the Biloxi tournament, these 100 boat tournaments with close to $1.5 million to $2 million in prize money. It's been hard for us as a club to get our footing, but I mean, last year we rebranded the Memorial Day tournament as the Gulf Coast Masters, partnered with some people that knew social media really well, and had a Sport Fishing World Championship, which is, it's pretty cool. There's tournaments all over, and it's all aired on CBS Sports. Mm-hmm. So we partnered with them and had a great turnout. I think we ended up with 48 boats and close to $726,000 in prize money. And I tell you, when we pulled up to Orange Beach Marina on Sunday afternoon, it was standing room only. It was just awesome. I mean, if we had got Harvey Ocean Foundation teaching kids how to paint, and there's just something for everybody. It was a good time.
That's awesome, man. And like you say, man, back when I used to fish all those tournaments back in, I'm gonna tell my age here, probably 2000 to probably 2008 or so. Back in those days, it was a spectacle. And like you say, the gap now is so huge. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I don't have a 70 Viking and go 40 knots. So it's kind of hard to find that middle ground. And I think, like the Masters this weekend is a perfect example of that. You have plenty of people in that middle range that want to compete, want to get out, want to have a good time. And I think you guys nailed it, sounds like.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Yep. We put the money in some stuff for people like me that want to go out and have a good time and just troll some lures and catch some fish. And then there's plenty of money left out there for the guys and the 70-foot Vikings with daytime crews and nighttime crews, and they're just serious live baiting boats. So it was a good turnout. Yeah, I'll tell you this too. it is the best captain's party on the Gulf Coast. Like we were talking about it on the boat today or this weekend. Was like, heck, I mean, just to go to the parties, food was excellent. It was like 4 nights straight of partying, which is part of my like lack of productivity this week. So it was a good time.
Yeah, I bet, man. Definitely enjoyed fishing those tournaments. Let's talk about real estate a little bit, man. I know people, I dabble a little bit here and there, and I'm talking to some people about, the housing market and the rental market, and just kind of walk us through what you guys are seeing over there. Are you seeing any upticks or downticks, or just give us a 50,000 foot view?
Well, I'll say this. In February 14th this year, I really think the market not only peaked out for the year, but peaked out on this little run. We had really gotten to about 10 days of inventory. And for instance, the past 2 weeks in Orange Beach, we've been looking at 41 and 42 days of inventory, a little bit tighter in Gulf Shores, right around like 32, 33 days of inventory. In Baldwin County as a whole at 33 days of inventory. And, I hadn't really stretched out into Mobile County or off into Destin, Panama City, 30A area. But my guess is those markets are kind of lining up. We're all kind of the same thing, are lining up in that kind of inventory range. And so I think if you're an owner, and it kind of depends on your position, right? If it's your second home, like why would you? There's no real advantage to selling. Like you're going to pay somebody a 6% commission to sell it. We're going to give back probably 10 to 15% of home values over the course of the next, 24 to 36 months, really 12 to 36 months. We're going to see a little bump because interest rates are climbing. And as interest rates climb, they are going to put downward pressure on home prices. But like, why sell off the farm when this is just a temporary hiccup? If you love where you're at, if it's your primary, I definitely wouldn't sell unless you've got making more money and you want to move up. If it's your second home, maybe same situation, if you're making more money, you want to move up. But if you're an investor and you're up $200,000-$300,000, $150,000, whatever percentage you're up, you got to look at like what it would take to make that amount of money net over the next decade.
And you got to replace it too, though, right? So that's something to think about as well. If you really like being down in that area.
Yeah, and if you like being down in that area, but if it's just an investment,
true, you're strictly an investment.
And it's just truly investment. And there's a lot of people. It's interesting. I work with a lot of second home buyers. Past few weeks, I've been working with a lot of investors because this is the conversation we're having. Hey, look, I think we've topped out. This is where I think you're at. This is where you bought. This is what I think you can get. And so there's also all kinds of, you can 1031, and I'm not sure if I would do that. There's also a product called a deferred sales trust that it's a very interesting product. Instead of 1031, and 1031 is just money from one bucket right back into the bucket. So whatever the market is, you're not really taking up advantage of any peaks or any dips. But with a deferred sales trust, essentially what happens is a trust takes over that property right before you're about to sell. And so the revenue that comes in does not come into the owner, it comes into the trust, thereby avoiding a taxable event. And so let's just put it like this, Butch. Let's say you had $1 million capital gains. You got $1 million profit. And so you're probably going to get taxed at about 40% on that. So really you're only walking away after, you got to figure commissions, all the little nitpicky costs that really don't matter to anything, and then 40% to Uncle Sam. So you're walking away with around $600,000. Or you could go put that $1 million in a deferred sales trust, not get taxed on it, and get 4% on your money, which is about $40,000 a year. You could keep it in there and it just keeps compounds. And then you can redeploy that money back into the market in a few years, back when we kind of see this dip, back in another good buying opportunity. You can only redeploy 70% of it. But that's the kind of conversation we're having with a lot of our sellers. And, with buyers, it's with second homes, it's really emotional purchase. With investors, maybe there's a tinge of emotion, especially with the Gulf front stuff. But a lot of people, it's just money to them.
Just numbers.
So how do we manage it? We're looking at it from a big picture. I'm fortunate enough to have really good trust with a lot of my clients, and we're not just looking at their real estate portfolios. We're the kind of, what's this fit into your overall portfolio and your retirement plan? What are we trying to do here? So there's opportunities. Look, the sky's not going to fall out. Inventory is going to remain low because there's going to be very few reasons for most people to sell. We'll probably see inventory probably climb up. This is going to be a great month, the whole month of June. I think if you're a realtor, kudos to you. There's going to be a lot of people buying this month. And then last year, July kind of slowed off, and I suspect we'll see the same. And that's just a seasonal approach. Kids go back, get ready to go to school. School starts in August.
Yeah.
We get into hunting and football season shortly thereafter. If you're going to have a place for the summer, you better put it get it under contract in June. Otherwise, people kind of lose interest.
Yep, agreed, man. That's great. Well, if people find themselves, and if that hit home with anybody in our audience, if folks want to get up with you and pick your brain to see if that's a good option right now, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Man, I tell you, you can shoot me an email at angelo@thecoastalconnection.com. Give me a call at the office, 251-279-0099, or really just go to our website, thecoastalconnection.com. All the contact information's in there. You can search every MLS from Mobile, Alabama to Panama City, Florida. And here's the great thing. If you're searching the MLS on our website, is like, we're not going to prompt you to register after clicking 3 pictures. We always kind of figured, hey, when you're ready to buy or sell, we're providing a great resource. You'll just reach out to us. That way I don't have to call you and try to figure out if you're actually interested in buying or selling. When you do register, we do reach out to you because we figure at that point, hey, you're trying to get a hold of us to buy or sell something.
That's right. And you can believe they will get a hold of you if they want to buy or sell something. Ain't that right? Before we get into the reports this week, I want to talk to something else that's near and dear to your heart. Let's go talk to Jenifer Parnell at the Flora Bama Fishing Rodeo and get the scoop on this year's tournament.
I mean, dude, I feel like
summer's flying by
big
already.
Game Club, real estate, Jenifer Parnell.
Yep, Angelo's heyday. All right, Jenifer, welcome back to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report. We always look forward to the Flora Bama Fishing Rodeo. It's coming up in 2 weeks. Just kind of tell us a little bit about the dates and the categories and the prizes and what you guys have going on this year.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me back. I always love being on here too. But the Flora Bama Fishing Rodeo, we like to call it the funnest fishing tournament on the Gulf Coast. It is June 10th through the 12th. So you can fish on the 10th and the 11th, and then we do awards on the 12th. The captain's meeting this year will be a virtual one again. It was successful doing it that way last year, so you can go on Thursday, June 9th at 6 p.m. You can look on the Flora Bama Fishing Rodeo Facebook page, and our Fishing Rodeo president, Mr. Angelo DePaola, will be on there talking about all the rules, and you can ask questions, and we'll make sure to answer them all before you get out there and start fishing to compete in the tournament.
Jenifer, I know that the kids are very, very well involved in the Flora Bama Fishing Rodeo. Whenever I come there, I always think it's hilarious to see all the kids, and they got to get their pictures with their catches. Tell us a little bit about the kids category and what else we can expect.
The kids are some of my favorites to watch. So they're just so cute coming in there weighing like a little pinfish, and they're so excited to see if they win a prize. But we have 13 categories for the kids division. And so they can fish anything from like a blue crab to a pinfish, all the way up to like a red snapper. So it's really fun for the kids to participate. And it's only $25 for a kid to enter. So it's great for any family that has multiple kids. I mean, it's definitely affordable for them to be able to do it. And a kid can also fish up into an adult category if they want to as well. So they could do kids and adults if they want to, or just kids. But tons of prizes. We have kayaks, fishing poles, fishing buckets, all kinds of passes to different kids' activities in the area, prizes too. So it's really, really family friendly.
It is family friendly. And that's one of the cool things about this tournament. I mean, you can catch anything from, like you just said, a kid can weigh in a blue crab. And there's also some pretty serious categories for your serious anglers as well that want to focus on the inshore, the hot topics like the speckled trout. And then also there's stuff for, all the way out to our offshore guys like swordfish and tuna and things like that too, correct? Tell us a little bit about all that.
Yeah, so we want this tournament to be for everybody. It's like an everyman's fishing tournament, just like the Flora Bama. It's for everybody too. So we do have those inshore categories. So if you're more of an inshore fisherman, we have multiple categories for you to compete in there. If you want to go offshore, we've got those too. We also have competitive divisions in each of those. So you can bet some cash money and hopefully win prizes in things like a king mackerel. We have different speckled trout competitive divisions, red snapper jackpot, and also trash can slams and the offshore slam.
Very cool.
I'll just say this, like the Flora Bama, they've got this thing down to a science. And from where we started year one, with a barge and a track hoe as our way station. And literally, we had a spud barge with a track hoe on it. To actually having docks where people can pull their boats up, a super organized way station. And like, I mean, I think one of the coolest things Jenifer said, the funnest fishing tournament on the Gulf Coast. I mean, like, you've got the Flora Bama Yacht Club on one side, you got the Old River Bar on the other side, and you got this big space in the middle where there's vendors and the beach. It's just a super cool scene set up for anybody that, whether you're fishing out of a big sport fishing boat or you're just, I mean, one year a kid won first place croaker fishing off the dock at the Flora Bama. So like,
he did. He fished all day and he would just come back and weigh in everything he caught.
That's awesome.
Jenifer, can I say this? Last year, we actually had a lady, I'm going to say it anyways, and we can cut it out afterwards.
Sure.
But we actually have a lady wanted to weigh her and
It is a family-friendly fishing tournament, but yes, that was
you definitely
true.
cannot
She
say
didn't
that
let
on
her
air.
weigh them, but she did come up there wanting to do that.
God. How much did they weigh? Did we not weigh them?
I wish we would have weighed them.
We didn't let her weigh them.
There's a bunch of
God.
gaff tops catfish slime on the scale at the time.
That's even better. Oh man, that's hilarious.
It's true.
But we do have a lot of categories for everybody else too.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, Jenifer, what's the best way to get up with you, and where can they find where to go, kind of where to send people to find out rules and what all they can participate in?
So if you want more information, you can always go to fishflorabama.com and you'll see a fishing rodeo tab on there. You just click on it. That's all the rules, how to register, all the categories. So everything's listed on there, but we hope that everybody comes out to participate or just to come watch. It's fun for everybody.
That's right. We appreciate it, Jenifer. We appreciate you guys being a sponsor, and we hope you guys have a great event. Everybody be safe.
Thank you so much.
All right, Angelo, let's head on down and get our first report of the day. We're going to cover a lot of ground, so to speak, with Chris Vecsey over there at Sam's Bait and Tackle in Orange Beach. I know he did some traveling for some destination stuff, but he's also been being very successful here in our home waters. Welcome back to the show, Chris. How we doing today, buddy?
Oh man, just survived Memorial Day week here in the shop, so that was enough.
I bet that kind of kicks off your snapper season and your summer and the long days in the tackle shop, if I had to guess.
Oh man, between Memorial Day weekend, you already got the regular traffic from it. Then you got, snapper opener, and you got Baldwin County Schools that just gotten out. Yeah, it's definitely a big triple header.
Mass chaos. Well, man, I saw you went somewhere pretty cool lately. Kind of walk us through where you went and a little bit about what you caught.
I went to my other home, pretty much has become my other home, that down on the east cape of Baja, so about an hour and a half northeast of Cabo San Lucas on the Sea of Cortez side. And just gone down there and did a lot of light tackle fishing for rooster fish, mahi. Sometimes we'll go out for tuna and billfish, but honestly, it's more fun staying in close, sight fishing roosters. We throw flies at them, all kinds of different lures and stuff. The mahi bite was really solid. We were catching mahi basically on the beach. My cousin caught one, about 22, 24-pound fish. We were throwing for cabria, which are a leopard grouper. They live right along the shoreline in all these, shallow rocky areas. So you're throwing big stick baits and plugs and things like that all the way up towards the water line along these rocks and then working it out off the drop offs. Well, he throws his plug up and I'm watching the lures go through the air because I'm thinking he's about to smash his $25 plug right on the rock. And it misses the rock by like 2 inches. So it lands right next to the rock in about 3 feet of water. And before I told him, I was like, that was really close. And he's like, yeah, no. He's like, I was about to yank it back. Well, before he could even flip the bail over, to put it in gear and start retrieving, lines getting ripped off. This mahi was up basically getting a suntan next to the beach in about 3 feet of water and grabbed his plug when it hit the water. So you end up getting this big dolphin right there, on shore. It was crazy.
That's incredible, man. That's one of those cool things about over there. Totally different world.
Oh, it's pretty much, besides home waters anyway, it's my favorite place.
That's awesome, man. Well, let's come back to Orange Beach, Alabama. What else you been doing down this way? You've been walking the beach, you've been on the kayak. What you been up to?
A little bit of both. I mean, I was going to do some offshore fishing this week, but anybody who saw the forecast for Monday and Tuesday, hopefully it was smart enough not to go.
Yep, no doubt.
It got snotty out there really quick. So I did a little bit of kayak fishing, caught some nice trout, a few other odds and ends. Been walking, we've been obviously we've been slammed in the store, so I've been in here a lot, but early mornings, been getting out on the beach, throwing both plugs and doing a little bit of fly fishing, catching trout, pompano, flounder. I mean, almost everything is out there right now. The fishing on the beach is incredible. You just have to deal with, of course, the weather we had, and then the sargassum weed. That's been a whole nother issue this year, is how much sargassum is coming in.
How are you getting past the sargassum weed? I mean, like, you look
Pictures
like
look nuts.
It looks like you could hide a dead horse underneath it. There's so much of
it. Well, getting past it, I'm not getting past it. I'm just kind of dealing with it. But the main thing is, if you cover the beach, like I don't even know how many miles of beach I've walked in the last few weeks, but you have to try. The water has been clean enough that you can find pockets where you'll see where the grass has not settled. And luckily, a lot of those places have been where the fish have been. So if you cover ground and you find those areas where you have little gaps in the weed that's laying on the bottom, because some places, it's like you said, it's 3 feet of it laying on the bottom. It's just crazy how much of it's on the beach. But you find those edges, and I liken it almost to like bass fishing in a pond, like fishing hydrilla. You'll find those edges of it, and the fish are just kind of laying along the edges and working in between these troughs, in between all the sargassum weed.
Sounds like it's making it easier to fish, because they're kind of like, the fish are kind of congregated in one area.
Well, it's easier to, once you find the fish, I feel like maybe there's a little bit of ease, but it depends on if easy means walking 2 or 3 miles on the beach.
Right. Got to find that space, huh?
Oh man, the other morning I got out there, and I walked 3/4 of a mile before I found the first opening. I mean, it was just terrible. It was as bad as it gets.
It's crazy. I don't even know what to do about that. Really, I guess you just don't. You just deal.
You just deal with it. It's like you came out, you got out there. Do you want to catch a fish, or do you want to go back home and take it easy? You can't catch any fish on the couch.
That's a fact. We're talking about being on the kayak some. I assume you're kind of up in the backwater from the past there. I know I saw some pictures of like Orange Beach Marina and all, and it looks like a huge grass mat in there. Are you having to find cleaner pockets in the inshore stuff, or how are you being able to get to these speckled trout and redfish?
No, I've been fishing when I've been kayaking. I've been down there more towards like the east end of Ono Island and Realty Point, Big Lagoon into Florida. The grassy areas like in Orange Beach, like close to Orange Beach, 2 things. The sargassum has been so bad you almost couldn't fish, like literally almost unfishable. But the other thing with the past week is there's been just entirely too much boat traffic. True. Yeah, like I tried launching the other morning. I mean, I launched at 5:30, and it's like there's twilight, but that's it. There was already quite a number of boats, coming in and out, and between all that and the sargassum weed, it was just too much going on. So this area, the immediate local area in Orange Beach, like launching from Boggy Point or Cotton Bayou, the fishing was very, very tough. You had to get away from the launches and really get away from the hangout spots if you wanted to catch any number of fish.
Definitely makes sense. Though, talking about finding an open spot on the beach, what are you being able to tie on and have success with these fish with that much grass? What are you doing to combat all that grass?
And here's the thing: if you're throwing in those gaps, you have no problem with the treble hooks. And every now and then you're gonna snag that little clump. But as long as you're fishing in between the pockets, it hasn't been too bad, because I've been throwing twitch baits, top waters, really a number of different things, and it hasn't been that bad of a hookup. As far as anything else, I've been doing more fly fishing than anything.
In the kite?
No, on the beach.
You think that's better for the grass? It sounds like, though, whenever you're finding these little reprieves from the grass, that it's really not that big of an issue.
No, I've been tying, like the way I've been tying a lot of flies, I'd have to kind of show you, but it makes them to where I'm not going to say they're weedless, because they're not, but they do seem to shed the grass a lot better. You got a smaller hook. You got fibers that are covering part of the hook, so grass can't snag nearly as easily.
Very cool.
Yeah, it feels like this is the time of year that you start catching the flounder off the surf. Are they stacking up pretty good?
I would say they're pretty thick. We're, I don't want to say that we're recovered. We've obviously had some pretty slow flounder fish the last several years, and you know how things come in cycles. You have good years, you have bad years. I would definitely say it's been a good year. Last season was pretty good as well. So I haven't really targeted flounder, but the fact that I'm catching them on the fly while I'm fishing for trout and stuff should definitely tell you there's a good number of them. I mean, there's the guys that are fishing for them, throwing plastics and fishing live bait, just off the beaches and down there around the ferry dock and the new pier at Fort Morgan. they're all catching plenty of flounder. So I think the numbers are very solid right now, both on the Southerns and the Gulf flounder.
So you mentioned that you're not really targeting those. They're just, quote, incidentals, which that's a fine incidental to catch, by the way.
Yep.
Anything that you've heard the other guys, like what are they having success on those flounder on the beach?
Mostly plastics, and some guys live baiting, but plastics have been the way to go. Covering water, fishing both, paddle tails and curl tail grubs. I'd say the most popular things lately have been anything in like whiter chartreuse. Probably the most popular lure has been the Fishbites has this 5-inch grub called a dirty boxer, and that's what a lot of people have been using. I'm still kind of old school. I still use unscented baits primarily. But either way you go, if you're fishing a plastic that has good action to it and you're keeping it, in contact with the bottom, you shouldn't have an issue catching flounder right now.
What about pompano from the beach? Anybody set rigging, or is it just out right now?
No, people are still set rigging and dealing with the grass.
Sounds terrible.
And the thing is, there's plenty of them, but no, I'm not going to do that. I actually caught several of them on fly in the past week.
Nice.
They're really, you get the fly in those pockets or that, pompano are very aggressive. They will absolutely eat a fly. But there's still good numbers of pompano on the beach. They haven't thinned out at all. I would say the size average is not what it was. And that's pretty typical as you get into June. But as far as catching pompano, it's definitely worth it. Just be prepared. You're going to be fighting the grass.
What about water quality? You guys seeing the water quality inside and outside, or has this rain messed y'all up? I know you don't have quite the river dumping that we get over here. Anything to that over there right now?
It was definitely more tannic. There's a pretty heavy, that dark green stain to it for the past several days. Today, it is noticeably cleaner. We had a offshore wind first thing in the morning, which I think helped. Of course, it's blowing onshore now. It's heated up in the afternoon. But tomorrow we have another offshore wind in the morning. If we keep that up, I think we'll see some cleaner water. This weekend, it looks like the weather's not going to be too bad, so we should be able to see it get back to normal, hopefully. But right now, there's still a fairly decent stain to it. I don't look at that as being necessarily too bad of a thing. Sometimes it actually leads to a better bite, especially on those big trout. But it's nice when it's clear, when you can sight fish. And of course, that lower salinity means you're going to see a lot more sardines, LY, threadfin herring, and things like that, move in tight to the beach and in the lower bays in general.
Chris, before we go, have you heard of any tarpon coming through our part of the world?
Now, why you got to bring that up?
Man, because I'm just kind of itching. I'm itching.
No, there's definitely been some fish seen. I've not heard of any fish caught yet, but I always start fishing for them usually the first week of June, or at least get out there and attempt it. My skiff just had the service done. I'm going to be picking it up this week, and I'll be going out there and probably looking, within the next several days.
Well, Chris, whenever those tarpon do start showing up, is there anything that you do different early season than you do whenever, that after a few have been caught and or, end of season? What do you start out doing whenever those fish start showing up?
I mean, the routine is kind of the same. You're intercepting migrating fish. So you're getting off the beachfront and you're waiting for those fish, usually coming from the east, going west. A lot of guys will just put out 2 or 3 baits under floats, under balloons, and just kind of sit there and wait. Early season fish are a lot more active. They're usually rolling more often. You'll see them tailing. You'll see them daisy chaining. And when they're like that, they're way more likely to take a swim bait, a fly, other stuff that you're actually sight casting to them. So I would say those early season fish through the first couple weeks of June, really first few weeks of June, put out baits to intercept, but I usually only put out a couple baits, and I'm going to stand there with either the fly rod or a spinning rod in hand, ready to put some kind of artificial on their nose. And most of the time you're going to get bit if you get it in their face.
Chris, one more question before we go. We got a lot of fresh water out there right now. How's that affect them? They biting a little bit deeper. They're still kind of biting close to the surface.
I usually, how it is when we get into July, for example, you get that some days you get that really heavy freshwater layer on the surface. When it gets like that, I feel like they're going to be deeper. With the conditions we have out here right now, I don't expect there to be much change in their behavior at all. Now, we do have kind of a groundswell out there. That's one thing that does affect them. Anytime we have a heavy groundswell, I expect them to be out deeper and more scattered. Instead of them being on consistent, depth lines off the beach, when we get a heavy groundswell, they could be anywhere from in, 14 feet of water right on the bar, but usually they're going to be in 20 to anywhere 35 feet further out. It makes it a lot harder to intercept them when they're scattered like that. So hopefully this storm that's, this low pressure system that's moving the Gulf, hopefully it'll get moved out quick and those swells will die off and get a consistent pattern on them.
Man, that's a great tip right there in itself, Chris. If folks want to get up with you and come into Sam's and pick your brain and get a surf fishing setup, a tarpon setup, or an offshore setup, or whatever they may be trying to target that week, what's the best way to get up with you and where can they find you?
No, they can always, they can always call us at the store, of course, 251-981-4245. They're welcome to come in. We're open 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. I'm usually here Wednesdays through Sundays these days. Of course, as busy as we've been, I've been here Mondays and even Tuesdays. But, just best thing is come by, let me show you some stuff, get you rigged up, see if I can't get you tied on a tarpon or anything else you want to target.
Awesome, man. And that's 27122 Canal Road in Orange Beach, Alabama, right?
That's correct.
Sounds great, man. We appreciate you giving us your knowledge and we appreciate you taking care of our listeners, man. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, guys, that wraps up another great segment. I'll take a quick minute and check out a few of this week's great sponsors. That segment was brought to you by L&M Marine. L&M Marine has something for everyone from small hunting boats, pontoon boats, to bigger bay boats and offshore hybrids. L&M Marine LLC prides itself on its customer service and knows how important it is to have someone you can trust and to be taken care of. They are locally owned and regularly support the community. L&M Marine provides superior customer service and has an entire team that consists of professional sales members, finance experts, service technicians, and a knowledgeable parts and accessory staff to support you. Go visit their friendly, reliable, and experienced staff now located only 6 miles north of I-10 at 34600 Highway 59 in Stapleton, Alabama, or give them a call at 251-937-1380. And also, Admiral Shellfish. Admiral oysters are available at select restaurants and can also be purchased by the public at Bon Secours Fisheries, Inc. and Ahi Seafood in Fairhope, Alabama. Call for availability. From a simple, nutrient-dense appetizer at home or a shucking party with friends, Admiral oysters will steal the show. Follow their adventures on Instagram at Admiral Shellfish Co. All right, Angelo, let's go on down and see what Captain Patric Garmeson's up to. I know right before this segment, you asked if I'd talk to Patric and kind of seen what he's been up to. And man, you never know what Captain Patric's up to. That's one of the qualities I like about him. You never know. He'll catch whatever's biting. He is not picky. How are we doing today, Captain Patric?
Doing well. Doing about what you've been talking about, just taking advantage of whatever seems to be the right species for the day. But still I can't complain about speckled trout fishing. I had a couple of tough days this week. There's really been only a couple of tough days I've had of any kind of trout fishing over the spring. So
what do you think made it tough? Was it, I know we got a decent slug of fresh water. What was that? And last week, I guess we got several.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that was pretty much all last week. Actually, we got all that rain. What do you think made it tough?
Man, I don't know. We went through the full moon and it felt like the fish never changed behavior. It felt like it just was like, it was great. And the full moon was there and it was still great. And we went through the full moon and it was great. And I remember listening, hearing, I think Richard was on there and around the full moon, and he was talking about, Bobby's talking about how it's going to get tough here in another day or two, and it just never did. And I don't know, maybe the new moon got him this time. I don't, you know how speckled trout can get a little funky around some of the moons, especially on the back side of it, or the day of the moon, and then the day after. And when I say the moon, usually going to be the full moon or the new moon. That, and then I was a little bit hand tied. My hands were tied a little bit on Monday. We had a good bit of wind that really kept me pressed up against the shorelines, just trying to be more fishable. And man, we just really picked it apart until we got some bites, and then just settled in on a zone, because we had fished a lot of areas that morning with little to nothing to show for it. A couple of little blow-ups on top water, but I had an area circled like in my mind on the calendar based on tide, based on moon phase, that was just going to be epic on Monday. And the fresh water did have that kind of muddied up and jacked up. Bait wasn't real tight. The bait was just kind of spread all over the place, and there were some fish around, but man, they just felt super lazy, like they weren't in the feeding mode. I'll tell you, one of the other observations I had over the last couple of days are there's just zillions of little minnows on the water. Anywhere you stop and fish, there's little tiny glass minnows or silver sides, whatever minnow they are. and anywhere from like 3/4 of an inch long upwards to say 2.5 inches long. And I caught a little trout on a Slick Junior yesterday that the trout couldn't have been more than maybe 10 or 11 inches on the lure, and it was so big around I couldn't even wrap my hand around it. A little 10-inch little trout, and when I grabbed it to take the lure out of its mouth, it must have puked up like 6 of these little tiny minnows on the deck of the boat. I'm like, man, that's I don't know if that's something that maybe those minnows were holding tighter to structure and weren't accessible to the fish, and then like during that new moon they spread out and became more accessible, and the trout just feasted heavily on them. But the ones that we caught were like super fat and had gorged themselves on minnows, and that was something. But then today we went to deeper structure and just really didn't have any trouble. It felt like the fish were hungry and ready to bite, and it just worked out. So I don't know. But yesterday we fished a little bit of everything. We fished deep, we fished kind of mid-level, like that 8 to 6 feet water, fished a lot of that 4 foot and shallower, and just it was funky yesterday. And I talked to some other guides from the Eastern Shore, and they were all like, man, I don't know what happened yesterday, but for some of them they were saying Monday was okay, but then everybody seemed to had said that Tuesday was garbage. I don't know. That's fishing, bro.
That's a fact. Captain Patrick, we've talked, I forget who was even talking to not too long ago, talking about kind of how you were going to plan your day. Actually, it may have been whenever you and Richard took over, talking about how you're going to plan your day. I seem to think that, starting out shallow in the morning, and when it gets hotter, the fish are going to go deeper, or the fishermen go deeper. I'm not sure which one guides which, but as far as looking at the tide and looking at the time of day right now, is that impacting your schedule, so to speak, at all?
Well, it wasn't earlier in the week, and even latter part of last week through the weekend, early part of this week, the water levels were great for fishing shallow as far as I was concerned. And Richard and I talk about it a lot, that it's not necessarily about a high tide, a low tide, or whatever. It's about more like water levels. So if you've got areas that there's some structures that are way exposed and the shoreline's way exposed and the water levels are down, the fish may be there, but they don't behave the same as they do when the water's really full and pushed up to the bank and structures are covered, and they just behave totally different and are ready to feed. And a lot of that was the case, like latter part of the week, and it just, I don't know, they just did not seem to be super fired up for me in the shallower waters that I went to. A lot of the fish that we caught in what we would consider like quote unquote shallow water, most of those fish actually came in the middle of the day, which there again goes kind of against the old fisherman, the old fisherman idea of like, oh, the hotter it gets, the shallower or the deeper you go and all that. But speckled trout generally don't live by that. They generally follow tides and bait and stuff like that. I've caught many big fish, a big trout in really shallow water in the middle of the day. So, and these were not only good trout, but there was decent numbers of them as well.
What's funny about that, Patrick, is this. Talking to the guys that were fishing offshore last week, the bite was going on in the middle of the day too.
Yeah.
I just wonder, feeding time.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the majors and minors or anything.
That we did have a good feeding time, kind of middle part of the morning, late morning, all the way into the middle of the day. But it is interesting where the feeding time generally is going to move about an hour towards, like if it's say 9 to 11, then the next day it would be like 10 to 12 or something. But it has been weird that there's been like more of like a 10 to 2 kind of bite period for an extended time, whereas today it kind of felt like it started kind of petering out on us today. But where we were fishing was really heavily tide influence, like where moving water really affects the bite a lot, and we were starting to see the tide level or the current speed starting to slow down, and those fish were starting to react to that is what I was thinking. But yeah, a lot of fish, especially in the shallow waters where there's not a lot of current, seemed to have fired off pretty good in the latter part of the day.
What's been working up in that shallow water? What you been throwing for them?
I get real focused on throwing slicks. Even now, the croaker color and any water that is just what you would consider moderately clear. Like, it doesn't have to be crystal clear or anything. Just something, when you look at it, you drop the trolling motor down in the water and it looks pretty good. Man, that croaker color has been money. And then the cool beans, both of those two have just been jam up. And occasionally we've been throwing like a tiger bait or cold night, the one with the it's like the cool beans body with the chartreuse tail, or the Bayou Blues with the chartreuse tail. Man, both of those have been a really good option. Like, if you're throwing a croaker or throwing the cool beans and not getting any love, add one of those in there with the chartreuse tail, and it seemed like that might sneak out an extra couple bites for you. But yeah, the slicks, you're not going to go out there and just catch 30 or 40 fish on it, I don't feel like, but it's still one of those baits that, especially if you and just a buddy are going fishing and you're going to go spend the 5 or 6 hours on the boat, I mean, it's a very good chance that you're going to catch some good quality fish. And like I had happen early last week, I had a guy that he was like, man, he said, I'm so bad about going fishing and I want to use artificial bait, but then I I'll buy a few dozen shrimp just in case. And he says he feels confident throwing top water because he can watch the lure. He understands the walk the dog and following a cadence of the lure. And he said that whenever it comes to like throwing a slick or a jig or something like that, with him not being able to see the lure, he was losing confidence in throwing it. So he would throw it a handful of times, not get a bite, put it up, grab the shrimp, and just stay committed to shrimp. Well, he was like, man, that's what I want you to do, is help me stay on the artificial bait all day. We didn't catch a lot of fish, but he actually he had like one that was basically like right at his PB of like a 22-inch trout, and then like 4 casts later caught a 26-inch trout, both on slick lures.
That is one cool thing about that slick. You're right. You stay consistent with it, it's going to produce. Yeah, that's very cool.
Absolutely awesome. It's very, very rewarding.
Yeah, it is very rewarding, and it can be frustrating. I'm not going to say it's always sunshine and roses, but man, if you stick with it, and which we consistently do, even though it gets a little painful sometimes. That's a great point, man. Talking about cadence and seeing your lure in top water. Whenever you're throwing the slick, do you ever change your cadence based upon the fish's reaction, based upon the water temperature, based upon the time of year?
Absolutely. And so the first couple years I was really committed to the slick lure, I fell in love with throwing it in like the fall and the winter time. And I got so comfortable, like I could see the thing moving in the water without actually seeing it, just slowly reeling. And I felt like the slower I fished it and the least amount of like actual rod action I gave it, the better it was. Well, then it would happen like almost overnight, where it would go from like you were getting bit to all of a sudden it's like, damn, I feel like I'm around fish and I'm not getting bit. And then you maybe see a slick or a mullet pop, or maybe you think you see a fish swirl, and you go and burn that lure in, and before it gets to the boat, one smokes it. And it's like, well, that's it.
Time to speed it up a little bit.
I'm going too slow. And then the next, and then start figuring out a little bit of a cadence on a faster retrieve. And then all of a sudden you go from like throwing 30, 40 times and not getting touched, and all of a sudden you catch 3 fish in the next 12 casts because you sped it up. And that's really reading what the fish are telling you. And I would say, you asked about water temperature. I would say that that's probably happening somewhere in that mid 70-degree water range. That lower 70s, I think you can get away with a little bit of anything. Too fast may get you in trouble, but too slow I don't think it's gonna slow the bite for you. But the higher that water temperature gets for me, I feel like the faster I need to get it coming in. I mean, really a steady retrieve will give it a natural, like swimming, walk the dog type action. And then those rod twitches will make it swim and then dart and then die and then catch back up and back to the walking the dog. And, but it seems like a lot of those fish are hitting it when it's just on a nice walk the dog, consistent speed. But that tends to happen somewhere in that mid 70-degree water. And once you get into the 80s, you're going to see where that's going to hold true, where the faster you can work it without it. Like for some reason, I don't feel like I have a lot of success if I'm working it fast enough where it's actually nosing all the way to the surface.
Right.
Which I don't get. Like it feels like that looks really sexy to me as a fisherman, that the bait is actually popping its nose up and then coming back down. I don't really have any luck with it when it's doing that. Like if I get the speed to where it's just staying below the surface, then that's kind of the sweet spot for me. And then generally what I'll see is as it gets hotter and hotter, it does become a little bit more of a challenge. And you got to I'll start using that lure a little bit less and less, but really using it in a more hyper focused area where there may be just a pile of bait activity on a point, and you're just seeing stuff blowing up, then just rip that thing through there and get them to bust it out of reaction. So that's kind of the transition that I've seen with using the slick lure.
Great breakdown. I've noticed some of that stuff too. That's definitely why I wanted to ask you that. Because it's easy to get stuck in your slick cadence and figure out what's working, but it dang sure changes. I've definitely noticed that.
Well, I tell you, last like in May, I think it was, Richard Rutland has an unbelievable ability to make a fish eat an artificial lure, and a slick lure is definitely top on that list. He and I and some of our guys from Atlanta, Greg and Scott and them, we all were, I don't know, probably about a cast apart or a couple casts apart or whatever. And we were just walking down we were all wade fishing, and we were just walking across this flat, and Richard sticks a fish, and we all stopped, and we're all just kind of casting, thinking that maybe there was a little bit of a drop off or something there. Well, there was like 8 of us there fishing, and Richard caught like 5 or 6 fish without anybody else getting a bite. So after he caught like his third one, and I hadn't had a bite, like I couldn't even get a bump on it. I was watching him, and I started trying to keep up with the same speed, and that was the ticket. Like his speed was a little faster. Like we were all kind of a little bit on that more winter type cadence, and he was doing the old meth head on a pogo stick thing, and
he ain't scared to work that thing,
keeping it coming in. And we and that was definitely what the fish wanted at that point. And the rest of that trip, when those guys were in and we were throwing slicks, it really paid dividends to keep that thing moving a little faster.
Very cool. Great tips, man. Let's move into a little bit deeper water. I know you and I talked a little bit about this morning, and it sounds like kind of slip corking's kind of or it's moving towards kind of a slip cork bite. Are you noticing, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, is it good all day, or is it better in the mornings, or when it gets a little warmer, or are you just trying to figure out what's your thought process?
Well, some days, this was another thing I heard Richard or Bobby, one of them, talking about it, where this time of the year, you got to have some rods. You got to have some gear on the boat and be ready if you're trout fishing. I mean, like my boat's going to start looking like a porcupine with so many rods in it. It's because I'm going to have slip corks, popping corks. I'm going to have free line rods. I'm going to have slick lure rods. As soon as the jacks start showing their face in the bay, I'm going to have me a couple rods for jacks ready to go.
Something a little beefier.
But yeah, so the as far as the slip cork is concerned, I generally am using the slip cork when I'm fishing water that's probably about, say, 8 feet and deeper, and especially around when I've got some current. Like because essentially what I want to do is present the shrimp, croaker, pogie, whatever I'm using as my natural bait. I want to present that bait as close to the same speed as what the current's moving as I possibly can. And that slip cork is by far the absolute best way to do it. You can't do it with a free line. because at some point in time, you're going to get a belly in your line and it's going to start pulling your bait faster than the current, or you're going to be tight lining it and you're going to slow it down and face it into the current, and it's not going to look as natural. So or a Carolina rig and you've got it pegged to the bottom. All of those things can work, but in my opinion, the slip cork is by far the best way to get that fish fooled into biting something that it without even thinking about it. Like, it's not gonna, I don't think these fish are gonna swim around and look at and observe the shrimp or croaker or whatever that you're sending down at the speed of the current, because it's going to be so natural that
Right.
they're not even think about it.
I ain't gonna check it out too hard.
There's a shrimp, go up there, eat it, go back down, get back down out of the current. Then you got that tail hook jammed in the corner of their mouth, and they knew that they bust up.
That's right. All over but the crying. Well, that's great,
right.
man. And I honestly, I guess I did a little bit growing up, but I really don't remember doing it much. I didn't start doing it, until we kind of started doing this podcast thing 4 or 5 years ago with you guys. So for our folks, that live up north, or heck, maybe even live here, that aren't familiar with it, just kind of walk us through what a slip cork is. What's your ideal rod setup, and what that rigging looks like?
Okay. The rod and reels I use are, I like to use spinning equipment. Some guys, if you're a bait caster guy and you just want to use a bait caster, the old school round reels are by far the best ones. Something that's got a big hole in as far as for the worm gear, or the level wind, to where you can have those slip knots and just pass right through. But anyway, I use braided line, 50-pound test on spinning tackle. I like to have like a 400, or I use the Lose 400, but it's essentially a 4000 series or size reel.
Mm-hmm.
I jam as much line on there as I possibly can. I'm not trying to cast these things a whole lot. It's all about just getting it into the current and start feeding it line. I use 50-pound braid because it is less likely to break. So then if you get it hung up with the leader, or the hook actually hangs up, or a Spanish or something like that, where to pull it and break it, you're not losing your entire rig, because I'm pretty good at tying these things up, and it still takes me probably 3 or 4 minutes. And if you interrupt me with having to net a fish or bait my hook or whatever, it's going to take 6 to 10 minutes to rig up a slip cork. So the least amount of slip corks I have to rig up on the boat, the better. As far as the way I have that thing set up, I'm going to have the 50-pound braid. I like my absolute favorite bead and slip knot combo is by a company named Thill, Thill. The thread is really small, so it doesn't get bound up into your spool too bad. So like in a spinning reel, when you go to cast it, every once in a while it may catch. If you were trying to cast at any distance, you may catch. Well, these are much smaller and they don't get caught up in your line as bad. They come with a bead that's really small, has a really small hole. It's barely big enough to fit that 50-pound braid into, but it is absolutely perfect because it'll slide up and down that braid and it'll get stopped by those tiny thill knots, instead of having those really big bulky. Some of these other brands sell these really big bulky knots, and they will get caught up in your spool. So the knot is the part where you're going to be setting your depth. So that's where you're going to pull that on. You're going to put it tight. I like to use 2 or 3 of them. Bobby taught me that trick. He's like, man, those things are going to wear out. So go ahead and even just the very first one, just start it with 2, if not 3. And then if it breaks later on, go ahead and put another one on there. Put a 3rd or 4th one on there, because eventually they get loose, unravel, and they just fall off. So always having those backups there is a good plan.
Man, that's a smart move.
Yeah.
So then,
because they are a pain to rig, might as well go ahead and do it while you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing you can do to keep that thing all intact without having to fully re-rig this thing every time. So all of those knots, the little tiny bead is money. That's all you need, as long as it's not going to fit through the type of slip cork you use. I use a Billy Boy from Betts Tackle. I use their corks, and they're the egg-shaped cork. They're orange and yellow. And the hole on them is pretty small. So that way that little tiny bead won't go in there and won't get stuck inside your cork. There's other cork brands, but the most important thing is using a big one, because most of the time we're using, if you want to slip cork a croaker, or if you're out there in a chop, you don't want to be losing your cork behind a little bit of a chop every 30 seconds thinking your cork went down. So I use like a 3.5 to 4.5 inch cork. They're good and buoyant. You can put from the cork, you're going to go below that, you're going to use an egg sinker. And I use anywhere from 1/2 to 3/4 ounce. I've done different things where I've gone like with a really small, like just a split shot or something, but I've kind of gone away with trying to do that. I just go all business, put like a 1/2 or 3/4 ounce lead on there, and then you're going to go from there to a swivel. The swivel just needs to be big enough to where your egg sinker doesn't slide over your swivel. I don't like using beads down there. If you go through the internet, you're going to find where there's some slip cork rigs where they're going to have a bead on top of the cork, a bead on the bottom of the cork, a bead, and then you're going to have your weight, then another bead, and all this stuff. In my opinion, that just is extra unnecessary rigging. There may be some guy that says, oh man, you can pop that thing a little bit and make a little bit more with the beads and the weights snapping together. Man, that's fine. If you're that guy and you think that works for you, by all means do it. But if you ever have to cast that thing out a little, a few feet, maybe 20, 30 feet away from the boat to get it in the right zone, and that thing tangles up and you got like 4 or 5 beads on there, that's just extra stuff to get tangled up on.
Yep.
So keeping it simple. After that, tied to your swivel is going to be your leader. I used to use exclusively fluorocarbon. I've gotten to where now I use either 20-pound monofilament or 40-pound monofilament. If the Spanish are real bad, I go up to 40. If they're not too bad, I stick with 20. And that's where I'm at there as far as leader material. And the monofilament has been getting it done. I've sent fluorocarbon down right beside it, tit for tat. I haven't seen any difference in our bay. I mean, I don't think the water is clear enough to make any difference. And that's me used to saying, this is the only way I do it is with fluorocarbon. I've put it side by side, and a $6 spool of Berkeley Big Game has been all I've needed, and since I've made the switch.
Yeah, I believe that.
And then as far as hook, I used to do a treble hook. I've gotten to where I do a lot of tagging fish and a lot of catch and release trips. A treble hook is going to get into a throat of a fish occasionally, and the least amount of fish I can kill especially when we're not intentionally trying to kill fish, we're just there to catch and release them, then I got away from the treble hook, and I'm now using a 1/0 Kale hook. And then also when the Spanish mackerel are bad, if they're bad, I'm going to go to that 40-pound leader with a 2/0 or even upwards to a 3/0 Kale hook, and does not slow my trout fishing down at all. And it actually helps me catch those Spanish instead of just being like, oh, there was a bite. Oh, what happened? And you reel it up and your hook's gone. Mm-hmm. They don't snake those shrimp quite as easy on that bigger, because that hook's, I mean, it's pretty long, it's got a decent, and so if he strikes that shrimp perfectly, man, that hook has got a nice longer shank and just gets him right in the corner of the mouth every dang time. And then if they do catch it just a little bit with that 40-pound line, they can fray it up and you can still get them in.
Plenty of backbone there.
But that is the Ugly Fishing Captain Patric slip cork special there. And then as far you asked about rod, I didn't even mention the rod. I just use a simple 7-foot, just medium or even a medium heavy action rod, because it's not necessarily about finesse or anything like that. It's all business, man. Once you hook the fish, it's all about getting them in. We, like today, for instance, we hooked and landed like a 22-pound black drum. So you don't want to be out there with freaking Mickey Mouse rods and trying to. I mean, they can catch. You can catch you some trout, but when you
a lot of other stuff down there.
When you hook a 22-pound black drum or redfish or something, I mean, one, I don't know who would want to just break it off and not catch it, but if so you want to catch your fish, so have some equipment there that can get that job done and get that fish in.
Patric,
what you got, bro?
Like, I'm just such a neophyte into like inshore fishing, and I've done some slip cork fishing, but I'm no expert at it. But like, you gave us a rundown of what to use. Like, what situations should we use it in?
Pretty much all of it, all of the natural gas rigs in the bay and in the Mississippi Sound.
There's a bunch of reefs that people slip cork too,
reefs,
right?
Yeah, the reefs in the Sound. Most of any of the reefs on the eastern shore are good for slip corking. Those are a little bit shallower. Some of those are like 8 foot and shallower, so it's kind of right at that line where popping corks may work. But I mean, I've seen it where we've set a slip cork at 6 feet and then have a popping cork with like a 3 foot leader, and the slip cork got the job done. Like, the fish weren't coming up any higher than a foot or two off the bottom. I especially like a slip cork when I can do what I was saying with like letting it drift in the current. I want to utilize that to just naturally just drift with the current. The popping cork is all about just throwing it out, popping it, trying to bring that fish up to you, and is not necessarily as much about the presentation of drifting in current. So if you find yourself in a lot of current, a popping cork is usually not the best option, even if the fish are shallow. Say if you were on a 12-foot structure and the fish kind of told you, or maybe you saw them on the fish finder, that they were only 5 feet deep, I still think a slip cork set at 5 feet deep is going to be a better option. Toss it up and let it drift down through the current, or just pay it. Like, it blows a lot of guys' minds when I tell them, like, hey, I want y'all to just drop it right beside the boat and then start feeding it line. 9 times out of 10, the guy's going to rear back and cast it out there 30 or 40 feet. And I got one person on the boat that listens to me and drops it right beside the boat, and they're hooked up within like 6 seconds after the line gets tight. They're like back at the back of the motor, like, oh, I got him right here. And this guy over here cast it out, probably tangled up and ain't even fishing yet. And yet the guy that listened to me that dropped it right behind the boat and just starts feeding it. Because, I mean, most of the time you're sitting in, 12, 14, 18 feet of water, sometimes even deeper than that. So those fish don't care about the boat. So just start fishing as close to the boat as you can, and then you're fishing away from the boat the whole time as it's drifting off. And if you're totally unfamiliar with the area and you've got a couple buddies, set one about a foot off the bottom, one maybe mid column, and then maybe another one up, maybe in the top, in the upper third column of the water, and then just drop them in the water and feed them all the way across the structure, all the way past the structure. Because a lot of times those fish, you may have like on the eastern shore, there's a barge over there that holds a lot of trout. Well, if you always just stop your bait right at the barge, you don't know what's on the other side. And those fish could sometimes be 20, 30 feet, heck, maybe 50, 60 yards past the actual structure.
Or hanging down current, waiting on bait.
Yeah, I don't know if they're like swimming laps around it, or if they're just hanging down there.
Getting their exercise, man.
Whatever. But I mean, I've been on the gas rigs in the bay where I had a guy, like, I was like, where the heck is your cork? He's like, I was way back there. I was like, man, you took my advice to the whole next level, man. I can't even. And then all of a sudden he's like, that thing went down. Close the bail, set the hook, and he's like, almost got. And I look at his reel, and he's almost put all the line off of it. He's like 85 yards down current from the rig, and then we reel this fish in, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to drop the boat back a little bit. So I dropped the boat back 20 yards, and now all of a sudden the next drift is 60 yards, and the cork goes down. I'm like, all right, we're on to something now.
Got
the boat back another 40 yards. Now we only have a 20-yard drift, and here we are. We're like, people thinking we're just idiots out in the middle of nowhere, but luckily I had a guy that chose to follow my directions on just keep feeding it line until you can't see it anymore.
That's awesome, man. That's a slip corking 101 right there. I think my last question on that is, say you're in 15 or 18 feet of water And you mentioned, getting 2 or 3 different guys at a couple different depths. What's the best way to gauge that depth? How are you going to know when to stop your slip cord, where to put your knot?
I measure it with my rod. So my rods are 7 feet. So depending on the depth, like if you're trying to go like 21 feet, it's a little bit tougher. But what I'll do is I'll grab my knot just above my reel, and I'll pull it down to the bottom of my rod and then pick it up. And then if my cork or my weight is right there at the base of the rod, then I got 14 feet there. And then like if I need to go 21 feet, I just got to, double that again to get the 21 feet. And that's usually the easiest way to gauge your depth is just the length, using the length of your rod. Probably the first, I don't know, 6 or 10 or maybe more times than that of slip corking as myself, on my own. I think I was like hooking it to the back of the boat and going to the front of the boat. Like, man, this boat's like 16 feet long.
The rod is a much easier option.
Yeah, the rod is a much, much easier option, and a lot less tangles involved.
I definitely agree with that.
But everybody seems to set their slip cork at a different depth. I set my knot to my weight is my depth. So from my weight to my knot, if it's 15 feet, I'm fishing 15 feet. That's what I'm looking for. My buddy Doug Smith, he always told me that in his opinion, the most trout he could catch on the rigs was whenever that cork was or when the weight was occasionally hitting the bottom. So if you were in slick calm conditions, that the weight would occasionally be bumping the bottom. So your cork would be doing this number as it's floating along, right? Mm-hmm. So it's hitting the bottom off. And that means your shrimp was just dragging right there along the bottom. I like to fish it just a little bit higher than that. So like maybe you're trying to figure out if your fish finder is even telling you the same depth that the actual depth is, and the current's not too bad. Just pull out way more line, or pull your slip knot up way further than what you think it is as far as depth. Drop it down, watch where it stops, and then keep sliding your knot down towards the cork until you get it to where that cork will stand up and start floating. So that'll get you right there, dead on the bottom or just up off the bottom. But keep in mind, a lot of these structures, it might be 18 feet exactly where you're sitting, but there may be a little hump. There may be a lot of the gas rigs have like limestone on the bottom,
rock piles and stuff.
I mean, if you have a little bit of a relief, if you've got a 1 foot or 2 foot relief that's just behind you, man, you're probably going to snag up on that thing a lot. So a lot of times you have to go as deep as your shallowest structure, I guess, or the highest relief structure. So if you know that 16 feet deep is the shallowest that you're going to see, but the whole rest of the area is 18 feet, I would try that 16 and see how that works for you. If you're not getting hung up, you can go a little bit deeper. If you're not getting bit, and get a little closer to the bottom and see how that works out.
That definitely makes sense, man. That's a great tip. Anything else, Angelo?
Man, I'm ready to go try some slip cork.
I know, me too. I have to try it out this weekend.
I'll tell you the other thing to keep in mind. We didn't get into the how-tos of slip corking, and I won't dig too much into the weeds on this, but the point of slip corking is the presentation. It is about putting it at the same rate of the current. So however you need to do that, like in the case of the corks that I use, the top is orange, the bottom is yellow. If I'm looking at the orange, we're probably making it go too slow because the cork's going to be pointed back to us. If we're seeing yellow, then we probably have too much slack in our line and it's actually pulling away from us. And not only is that going to be an issue with how at the speed at which it's moving, you also have a big bunch of slack in your line.
You get tangled up with everybody else on the boat.
Yeah, if you're getting tangled up, or when the cork goes down, you have 15 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet of slack to pick up, and you better get that line tight. You need to get all that slack picked up, get tight to the fish before you set the hook. If you set the hook, especially with braid, if you set the hook and you've got a big slack in your line, it's almost like sending like a whip, like it'll go down. You can set the hook like that, and it'll just about hook the fish, and it just yanks it right out of their mouth.
Yep.
I wish I had $1 for every time I've seen it happen on my boat. I could retire and be just working for Angelo.
That's
on the
right.
side.
That's right.
The only times I ever used it was triple tail fishing. And so, like, we were just trying to get it at whatever depth we thought the fish was at.
Same principle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I just wonder, even on tarpon fishing, like, they're not always on the surface. I mean, in my head, I've been like, well, I could probably send out 3 of these, one close to the bottom, one mid-range, one kind of up on top.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just like sword fishing. Same thing. Sword fishing with a
Exactly
balloon.
like sword fishing. I mean, it is exactly like sword fishing.
Yep.
Except like
a lot deeper.
Yeah.
What about redfish, man? You've been honing in on any redfish? It's been a speckled trout only game.
Hadn't been really honing in on any. We've picked up a few. Man, I don't know what the deal has been, but like the Eastern Shore is just, I don't know, man. It used to be a good fallback for me, and talking to other guides around the Eastern Shore are all kind of singing the blues. Talking to Richard and Bobby, it sounds like they all must have migrated into the Mississippi Sound or something. We did go, did fish around the causeway for the Christ the King tournament a couple weekends ago, and we ended up finding a good school up on the causeway and put some stuff together for Cooper and Taylor Moreau's little brother Lucas. They took first and second place in the Christ the King tournament on redfish. But that was a causeway thing. Just found some grass, found some fish, and it seemed like there was a decent amount of fish up there. But for some reason, anything like Fairhope South has just been not great. And I've spent a lot of time in that area, and man, there's days I can think back on where we could go and, kind of a bad day of red fishing would be, 13, 15 redfish over the course of a 6-hour trip, just focusing on redfish. And now, man, I think I'd be ecstatic with about 4, 5, 6 out of a 6-hour trip, which makes for a long day if that's all you're trying to do.
For sure. Well, hopefully that'll change. Maybe who knows, maybe get later into the summer and that'll change. Let's hope nothing weird happened there. I know everybody probably has in the back of, or I do have in the back of my mind, the redfish killing all that. Hopefully that didn't impact anything.
Yeah, it's been in my mind as well. Nobody was seeing smaller slot size or rat size redfish,
right.
But did those guys sink? Did something happen on the east? I don't know. I mean, the trout fishing's been good, so it's not like there's something in the water that's especially with the redfish. That dude's about as tough as nails. So
no doubt. Let's just not think that. We don't get paid to think. So
yeah, I'm not worried. I'm just saying that it's different.
For sure. I agree.
It's definitely different.
Yeah. Something to keep your eye on, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that's a great report. Ton of great tips. Slip Corking 101 from Captain Patric Garmeson. I enjoyed it, man. That was a good topic. If folks want to get up with you and book a trip, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Best way is uglyfishing.com. If you're curious about just directly booking a trip or checking availability, you can click that book now button and you can see my calendar and book online. Or if you've got some questions before booking, you can give me a call or shoot me a text at 251-747-1554.
Awesome, buddy. We appreciate you being on as always, and be safe out there, man. Keep whacking them.
All right. Thanks, Butch. See you, Angelo.
See you, dude.
All right, Angelo, that was an awesome inshore report from Captain Patric Garmeson. Let's take a quick break and check out a few more of this week's great sponsors. That segment was brought to you by AFTCO, American Fishing Tackle Company. AFTCO's fishing clothing is designed to handle the harshest elements. From cold tournament mornings to the humid summers of Florida, their products are built to handle the extreme. They're proud to hear customer stories about the 20-plus year-long life cycle of their AFTCO products. Their passion for the outdoors goes beyond their products. They're committed to protecting their fishing resources and angler rights. Through their 10% pledge to protect and conserve, your purchase of any AFTCO product directly supports conservation initiatives. Visit aftco.com. That's AFTCO.com to learn more. And also brought to you by Yactix. Yactix Kayak Rentals and Guide Service, providing unique and engaging experiences for anyone on the Alabama Gulf Coast and surrounding areas. Their kayaks come fully equipped with everything you need, including fish finders, nets, stakeout poles, fish grips, pliers, fishing poles, and bait and tackle. They offer a wide range of services to fit any weekend agenda. Let them deliver your boats to the launch, guide you through some of the best fishing spots, or accompany you on a relaxing hands-free pedal through the beautiful and scenic coast. They welcome all, from first-timers to seasoned veterans. More information available at yakdix.com. And also, CCA Alabama. 30 special tagged redfish will be released inside Alabama coastal waters before the tournament starts on the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend and ends on Labor Day, Monday, for 101 days of angling. If CCA does not have a grand prize winner during the tournament, the grand prize will convert into a raffle for all registered anglers. Registration is only $75 and $40 for current CCA members. Sign up now at joincca.org/star tournament. All right, Angelo, we're going to move our way offshore, man. I can't wait to hear about you guys' success story on the Dolphin and kind of what else you guys ran into, man. What kind of boat were you fishing on first and foremost?
Man, we're on a little 43 Cabo convertible.
Little 43.
I mean, you know what? That used to be, I was talking to a friend of mine. He was telling me about his dad had a 42 Bertram back in the day. And he was like, it was just the bee's knees. And like now,
You're right.
Cabo convertible. I mean, it's a tiny boat, not that fast and medium range.
Yeah, things have changed a lot since you and I were on the back deck doing it for a living, for sure. Boats have gotten unbelievable. So yeah, I just had to poke fun at you there on the small 43. Yeah.
It was funny at the captain's meeting. The guys were asking like, "What are you fishing on?" I was like sheepishly like, "Oh, a 43." When everybody else is in like 72 Vikings and Spencers and everything else that you're competed against. Like that's a small boat in this.
For sure.
Terms. Even in the center console world, there's a lot of center consoles that are bigger than that.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. That's an inboard?
Inboard diesel engine. I think he had man engines in it.
Nice. Raising fish up. So you guys were trolling mostly, you said?
We did nothing but trolling. I mean, we brought the stuff to go catch bait and live bait, but like we were fishing basically dolphin and wahoo, and if we got some billfish, that was just going to be a bonus for us. And so there was kind of two parts of this little eddy that had kind of pushed in. One kind of over by the Fads. The other end of it was kind of near Spirit Rig, Virgo, 989, Ram Powell, all that area. So we
eddy meaning warm eddy that you saw in satellite imagery?
Oh yeah, like if you looked at a Hilton's, I mean, it was
Gotcha.
like a little, what would you call it, like a grub tail curl. Kind of bending right in there. And so you had a north and a south end of it. And, we kind of figured most of the people live baiting were going to go run to the rigs. Handful of people would run to the Fads. And most everybody would run over this stuff kind of starting in that 500 foot of water. Well, on the way out, I mean, we're in 120 foot of water, a little north of like kind of northwest of the Exxon rig, really. And it just was pushed up nice. Green to blue line with lots of current, and then the grass was and this is one thing, if you're going to go fish weed lines, you got to have a couple things. You want to have grass, and what you really want, and when I mean grass, sargassum weed, you want that bright golden color. What we noticed was later on the weekend, we're kind of fishing steps in the elbow and into the nipple area, and that grass over there was more of a brown dead color. It was completely void of life. We didn't even.
I never feel confident around that stuff.
No, there's no bonitas, there was no flyers, there was no nothing over there. So we had good grass, big giant mats, lots of current, and then 120 foot of water. We saw it. We said, you know what? This looks good. Let's go ahead and lower the riggers and start fishing. And that first day, we fished it out to about 1,200 foot of water, a little southwest of Virgo. I wouldn't say it was on fire by any stretch. I mean, we picked away at dolphin on up to about 15 pounds. That was the only bites we had. It was really kind of slow for us. And we worked our way out to Horn Mountain, fish horn, ram powell, marlin rig, beer can, all that the next day on Saturday. And we just said, about noon, so let's work our way back into that line. That current that we saw on day one, non-existent on day two. Mm-hmm. And it was bunches of big grass piled up over there, and we just started picking away at fish. And we knew for us, we were just going to troll lures and meat. One side, I'll tell you what our spread looked like. On one side, we had a Islander on a planer The other side, we just had a regular old Islander. On our short baits, we had Islander Express or the Cruiser. It's kind of the bigger one with like a jet head in it. And then we had like, I think 19 couple Barts on the long rigger. One was a Sandsow Candy, which I will tell you, it's always been a great long rigger bait or center rigger bait. And most people use it as a wahoo bait, but if you don't put the weight in front of it, it trolls really nicely behind your boat, sheds grass well. There was a lot of scattered grass the last 2 days of the tournament. So it was a nice bait to have out there. And then we had a Moldcraft hooker on the way long on the center. And that lure just pops well. I mean, I'll tell you, we just really kind of got lucky. We picked away at it. And late on Saturday afternoon, got a big dolphin bite. We ended up weighing 40 pounds, winning the tournament. And we were bet pretty good in the money. So we walked, it was like a $30,000 fish for us.
Heck
and
yeah.
then, I mean, an hour later, we had what would have been the winning wahoo come up on the flat line. Just, I wouldn't call it sky, but it went shoulders, his whole body perpendicular to the boat or parallel with the boat. Missed that bait, hit the bait on the planer and just tripped the planer, but we didn't get hooked up. But overall, good trip. I mean, look, if I would say this, my takeaway, we fished way west, and the last day we worked our way through all the rigs, back in through the steps, Photonis, the elbow, all the way into the 131 hole, covering everything from like 250 foot out to 500 foot. And there was no bait on that east side of the ledge, but I think there was a few fish over on the fads that day, from what I hear.
Pretty blue water everywhere you guys went?
To the west, it was kind of due south up on the steps, and the elbow was like a nice blue green. You know, I've caught plenty of fish in a blue green.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know what was going on in the water that day. Just there was no bait, no bait over there. I know. We had some nice blue marlin caught in that tournament. I think Skin Deep had one
for sure
over 700. Another guy had one 588, and hell, there was a boat out of Texas that, from what I understand from talking to the captain, they fished the fads, and I've never heard of this Butch. 7 sailfish in one day in our part of the Gulf of Mexico, especially this time of year, plus a white and a blue marlin kicker.
Wow.
And, there's really good fishing out there.
Yeah, that's nuts. I don't think I've caught 7 my whole life out there. I think I can probably count 3 or 4.
I got to talking to the guy, and he was from South Padre Island, and there's really good sailfish fishing in South Padre Island. And so it was interesting when you go to a big game tournament up here, you see a lot of 80s and 130s, and this guy had 450s and a bunch of 20 Italicas. They were obviously, I think we had Nick on this boat, dredge fishing with teasers and pitch and everything. And, you know, they just knew exactly what they were doing and came and won a catch and release division.
All right, Angelo, it sounds like you guys had a great trip, man. It's always good whenever you can at least pay for fuel on your way back with a winning fish, man. Congratulations on first place dolphin there. What did you learn? What, you know, I always like to take away from a trip. Being out there and learning a lot of things is great. What did you pick up? Is there anything you did that you wish you didn't do, and or vice versa?
Man, I'll say this. First, we trolled at night just because we were just kind of chugging all night. We didn't get any bites. I'd probably do it again. But the one thing that I think had to go back and redo some things is, especially on the last day of fishing, that line had broken up. Really big patches out there, but it was just scattered grass everywhere. And we were pulling with teasers and everything, like 8-9 lines at a time. So it's just constant work of trying to shake grass off of it.
Which is miserable if you've never done that, by the way.
Oh my God. It's just so much work. You're just constantly reeling. You just can't relax any.
Yep.
Yeah. And just after being out there fishing for 3 days, it's the last thing you want to do is just constantly reel. We were getting bites in that scattered grass, and that's where the fish were. And we left that to go find some cleaner water, just to a reprieve from the effort.
Sure.
And hindsight 2020, man, I probably would have gone down to 4 rods and
figured out a way to stay there more efficiently in that grass.
Stay there more efficiently in the grass. Sometimes I don't necessarily think it's the amount of the rod baits you have in the water. it's when you located the fish.
Absolutely.
We were located on fish, but we just did not have the willpower to fish in that anymore. And I'd probably, it's hard to say, hey, take your 5 lures that you like out of this in this spread out, and let's just go with 4 of them. But that's what we should have done.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I wonder if kind of moving around in that grass with some different live baits or something like that would have been effective. Hard to say.
I
Who
think
knows?
it was like impossible to. I mean, it was just like
that much grass, huh?
I think hindsight 2020, we should have pulled all the meat out of the water, put lures out, stayed in the grass, and pulled faster. We had a stretch where we just put some wahoo baits out and ran at 18 knots, and they never got hung up. We never got a bite either. But like while we were doing that, I was like, man, we're like, this is making this decision to go fish in cleaner water. And the decision for us was this: we had a big dolphin in the boat, and we knew that grass had a lot of dolphin, and we felt like if we can get in that 250 to 400 foot water range, up in the steps and the elbow and all that, where there's a lot of natural hard bottom, and in that blended blue-green water, that there was a good, that was going to be we thought that was a good chance to catch a wahoo.
Sure.
They weren't there. I mean, I've made that same move plenty of times, and it's paid off.
And it worked out. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. That's great, man. We appreciate the offshore report. I definitely agree with that, but it's hard. Like fishing in that grass is not that fun at all, especially when like you're trolling, especially on like the Lady Ann where I grew up. I mean, we have at least probably, I don't know, 20 or 25 lines out at all times. Dad was always trying to cover at least 400 or 500 yards of water with our lines. So I'm no stranger to pulling grass, man, for sure.
But yeah, man, great fishing, great tournament, great to be out there. Big shout out to Will Cooksey and his dad and his brother, Ben and Bill. And we had a great crew. We had great food. Matter of fact, we were going to put up a burger review from the boat on my Facebook page. So if you want to see a burger review offshore and a teaser microwave burger, because it was so rough, the guy was like, I think it's going to be rough, so I'm going to cook them partially. He had it dialed in on how you microwaved it. And I'll just tell you, my bar for a microwave burger was set too low.
Interesting to know. We'll have to tune in and see that.
So hit me up on our Facebook page if you're listening. We'll have that up on Thursday.
Definitely will, man.
My bad. Elizabeth says Friday.
All right, folks, that was an incredible report. Let's take a quick break and check out a few of this week's great sponsors. That segment was brought to you by Ricciardone Family Dentistry. You're going to need a good dentist, so you may as well make an appointment with fellow angler Josh Ricciardone. He provides services for all ages and accepts most dental insurances. Do not let an achy tooth ruin a day on the water. Call today to book an appointment at 251-342-6672. And also brought to you by Foster Contracting. Fortified Roofing Pros. Often when a business is small, you miss the professionalism you get with larger companies. That's not the case with Fortified Roofing Pros. They're a family-owned business that is big enough to get the job done, but small enough to care. If you're looking for quality construction with a dependable, licensed, and certified fortified roofing professional, give the Fortified Roofing Pros a call at 251-973-9999. Remember to support the local businesses that make your local podcast possible, and check them out at fortifiedroofingpros.com.
Man, Butch, great show. I mean, we covered everything from past tournaments, future tournaments, for freaking Chris Vecsey catching
all the way to Baja.
I mean, all the way to Baja. And then Patric comes in and just drops knowledge bombs on us, like PhD in slip cork fishing, all the do's and the don'ts. Dude, what did you learn?
Man, I definitely picked up a lot from Patric's slip corking thing. Lots of pearls of wisdom to take away there. I would think definitely the thing that I took away most that I'm going to apply to my daily fishing is, or daily, I wish I fished daily, maybe monthly fishing would probably be a better way to put that. The slick lure cadence, man, because especially with the slick, but with any lure, you just get away, you want to fish it, right? I mean, doesn't matter if it's cold, if it's hot, water temperature, you just get away that you have caught fish with that lure before, and it's super easy to get concreted into a cadence. And I've definitely noticed with that slick lure especially, and it was really good to hear Patric here that he does the same thing and does alter it, and kind of lets the fish and the conditions tell him what works better at that particular time. How about you?
Man, I'll tell you, I've been really, to me, slip corking's kind of I wouldn't say complicated, but it's got its intricacies. And so outside of doing it for triple tail, I didn't know a whole heck of a lot about it. But I'll say there's two things, or a handful of things I pulled, but the two main things was adding the 3 beads so you have one there as a backup.
Yep.
Man, it just makes so much sense. And then I never thought about just using it to move that bait with the current, like bouncing the lead off the bottom. I mean, it just makes so much sense. I just think it's such a versatile way to fish. And it's like one of those things that's, I wouldn't say frowned upon, but nobody ever goes,
well, it's not
"Oh,
glamorous.
man."
It's not glamorous, right?
It's not a glamour fish.
It's not top water. Let's be honest. I mean,
okay. Yeah. So I get top water. I get all that, but man, I just like going out and catching fish and bending a fishing rod. And to me, whether you're drifting across an oyster reef or down the side of an oil rig, it just seems like that is a very efficient way to fish.
it is, and it's very conducive too. I mean, you can catch anything. Like Patrick, I did it a week and a half ago with Dad. We caught nice speckled trout. We caught 2 hammer redfish. We caught sheep's head. Caught a couple of the old catfish, of course. But I mean, yeah, you can catch all kinds of different stuff on those rigs in the bay. So I definitely agree. It's a very beneficial way to fish.
So, I mean, that's what I learned. I just thought it was a great show. I thought Patrick just really brought the heat today with the slip cork fishing. It wasn't a 101 level class. I can tell you that.
That's right. It went all the way from 101 all the way up to 501.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that wraps up another great segment. Let's take a quick break. Check out a few more of this week's great sponsors. That segment was brought to you by Photonis Defense. Photonis Defense is proud to offer the PD Pro line of night vision systems. The PD Pro series is the world's smallest and lightest night vision goggles built around the Photonis 16mm filmless 4G image intensifier tubes in their hybrid filmless 18mm image intensifier tubes. These ultra-light, ultra-compact night vision systems deliver cleanest images, best resolution, smallest, most transparent halo, and best overall performance and function of any night vision system available. The PDR Pro line consists of the PD Pro M 16mm monocular, the PD Pro B 16mm binocular, and the PD Pro Q panoramic night vision system. Photonis Defense, masters of darkness. And also brought to you by Alabama Marine Resources. The Alabama Marine Resources Division reminds all recreational anglers who harvest gray triggerfish, greater amberjack, or red snapper that their catch must be reported through Snapper Check. This includes vessels, kayaks, and shore anglers who possess any of these reef fish. Reporting is mandatory and must be done prior to landing fish in Alabama, regardless of where the fish were caught. Anglers can report to Snapper Check online at OutdoorAlabama.com or through the official Outdoor AL app. For more information about Snapper Check or any of the 2021 fishing seasons, please visit OutdoorAlabama.com. All right, Angelo, man, it's always a pleasure having you co-host. I'm glad you're with me today. I enjoyed it. Like you said, man, a lot of good information. We covered a lot of ground and lots of pearls of wisdom to take away from this one.
Oh, dude. I mean, great reports, very timely. We're coming in where everything's about. I felt like we've said this the past couple of shows we hosted, but like literally, like every trout fisherman I know seems like they're like,
oh yeah, honed in right now.
You know, the offshore fishing is in full swing. The surf fishing, and Chris sounds like when he can get out there and get between the grass on the beach, he's catching nice fish. I love tarpon fishing. They are nobody's caught them yet, but they're almost here. Yep. I was talking to a friend of mine, one of the guys that fished with us. They caught a 70-pound cobia off one of the ships last week. So I mean, it's full throttle. I love it.
Yep, me too, man. All right. Well, like I said, enjoy the offshore report. Thanks for being on with me today, and we look forward to hearing from you next time, man.
All right, man. Awesome. Can't wait.
All right, folks, that wraps up another great Alabama saltwater fishing report. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to text the word fishing to 314-665-1767 to get that 10% off AFCO promo code and also to be added to our email list. And we'll send you the new show each week. You guys be safe out there. This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report has been brought to you by KillerDock. KillerDock uses marine-grade aluminum to make fabulous fish cleaning tables and stunning canopies that will keep us out of the sun. KillerDock combines durability, function, and design to uniquely upgrade your entire dock experience. Visit KillerDock.com to see more. And also brought to you by Bahio Sunglasses. See more, catch more. Experience the clearest lenses on the planet with Bahio Sunglasses. Try on a pair at your local retailer or check out BahioSunglasses.com to see for yourself. And also brought to you by BoatersList.com. If you own or run a boat, you know how difficult it can be to find the right company for the task at hand. Sign up at BoatersList.com to find a company to work with on your next boat project.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report brought to you by me, Angelo DePaola, The Coastal Connection. Find us online at thecoastalconnection.com.
Also brought to you by Hilton's Real-Time Navigator, bringing you the highest quality online satellite fishing chart since 2004. Your source for sea temps, altimetry, currents, and watercolor at hiltonsoffshore.com. Also brought to you by Bucks Island. They have new pontoon boats, bass boats, bow riders, and aluminum boats for sale. They provide boat service on all kinds of boats, even if they weren't purchased from Bucks. Visit them at 4500 Highway 77 in Southside, Alabama, or give them a call at 256-442-2588. And also brought to you by MB Ranch King. MB Ranch King hunting blinds and feeders are built to last, right here in the USA. They offer high-quality, easy-to-use corn and protein feeders that can be filled with both feet on the ground. Call Kevin today for more info or a quote at 205-807-2937. MB Ranch King, built in the pursuit of perfection. And also brought to you by Fishbites. Whether you are hitting the sand with set rigs using the traditional scent strips for pompano or fishing the flats or marshes for speckled trout, redfish, and flounder, Fishbites has something for you. Fishbites baits and lures are made with pride in the Sunshine State of the USA. Check out the full line of scented saltwater and freshwater baits at fishbites.com. And also brought to you by Dixie Supply and Baker Metalworks are proud to be your metal roofing headquarters for over 40 years. Save time and money by buying from the most reliable manufacturer on the Gulf Coast. Buy it today, pick it up today. With the addition of their new store in Cantonment, Florida, they now have 8 locations to serve you. Dixie Supply and Baker Metalworks, your metal roofing headquarters. And also brought to you by Test Calibration. Test Calibration is your source for sales and service of diesel turbochargers and fuel injection systems since 1976. Contact them at 800-822-0057 or visit them online at testcalibratindieselandturbo.com.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report was brought to you by me, Joe Baya, and National Land Realty. If I can help you in any way with the purchase or sale of land in Alabama or Florida, whether it's timberland, farmland, recreational land like hunting land, or even agricultural land or ranch land like horse farm, drop me a message at jbaya@nationalland.com. That's JBAYA@nationalland.com.